It's 7 p.m. Calling to order the special meeting agenda for September 8th, 2022. Representatives Chase, Jacome, Powers, Gardner, and Scott are present. Representative Norman, Fritchie are absent. We have new business. We'd like to take up the Wolfbrook property release of easement. I'm going to ask Kathy to read that in, if she so would choose. Representative Chase.
Read this whole thing?
Yeah, just read it all in there, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. A resolution releasing the 2006 conservation easement and granting to the state of Connecticut an open space easement over the Wolfbrook property. Whereas on November 10th, 2006, Wolfbrook Development LLC and Mystic Active Adult LLC granted the town of Groton a conservation easement for winds at Mystic Active Adult Community, the 2006 easement over portions of property known as the Wolfbrook property, situated on the Noank Ledged Road, the property, in compliance with local and federal permits that were issued for an adult use development at the property. Whereas the 2006 easement was recorded November 21st, 2006 at volume 964, page 107 of the land records, whereas the local and state permits expired and the adult use development was not constructed. Whereas on July 6, 2021, the town council approved a resolution to purchase the entire Wolfbrook property for open space purposes and in connection therewith appropriated $800,000 toward the purchase. The said resolution advanced a plan to acquire an open space grant from the state of Connecticut and thereafter to grant a conservation easement over the entirety of the property. Whereas after the adoption of the above referenced resolution and appropriation, the RTM approved similar resolutions. Whereas the state of Connecticut is requiring, as part of the issuance of an open space grant, that the town release the 2006 easement so that it may be replaced with the state's open space easement. Now therefore be it resolved by the town council of the town of Groton that the town of Groton shall release the 2006 easement contingent upon the town of Groton acquiring the property and granting to the state of Connecticut an open space easement over the property. Number 2, the town manager is authorized to sign, execute, and deliver such release instruments and other documents reasonably necessary to carry out this resolution, all subject to review by the town attorney as to form and legality.
A motion?
I so move.
Second. Okay. I think Director Reiner's here. Could you chime in and give us a little briefing on how all this is going, John, please?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services. Thanks for having me tonight. So I think a lot of the details were actually just in that resolution that was just read, but to kind of give a little bit of a additional overview, this is a 161 acre parcel. The appraised value of the property is $880,000. The town is buying this property for $800,000. The town is contributing $220,000 towards the purchase. GOSA is contributing $210,000. And the state of Connecticut is contributing $352,000. We have been working with some private donors that are covering the rest of that gap for the funding there. They've already raised all that money and it's deposited in an account that's just ready and waiting for when we, if we continue to move forward towards the closing on this property. So again, the background, back in early 2000s, this property was partially approved for a development. They received an Army Corps approval, which has hence expired. And as part of that approval, there was an easement that the Army Corps required on the property. And the state of Connecticut will only allow us to use their grant funds if we abolish the existing easement on the property. And that would only happen at the time of closing. So there wouldn't be any risk that we would give up that easement and then the sale wouldn't go through. So that's really the whole story there is to it. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Thank you.
Any questions from Representative Scott, Gardner? Any questions?
I'm all set, thank you.
Representative Gardner, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's a,
Yeah, I have a question. On the easement, so we are gonna give up our easement. The town is gonna give up their easement and the state is gonna replace it with their easement, is that correct?
Correct. The easement that we have right now only covers a portion of the property, and it's really just on like the wetland areas. It's not on any of the upland. There might be a little bit of a tiny upland that's like the wetland buffers, but it's not really the usable land that has the existing easement on it. So the new easement that the state will have, it'll be a state easement that's on the entirety of the property.
Okay, and the easement will be used for public access?
So the property will be preserved in perpetuity for open space. We, in our grant application, put in there that we envision hiking and walking trails, that there'll be a small parking lot built so people can get on, park onto the property, and then go walk on the property.
One more question. So the state's easement will be for what purpose?
For open space protection.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
okay. Seeing no further questions, I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed? No abstentions. That passes 5-0 to 0. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time, Director Reiner.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Have a great.
Good night.
Okay, that's good. We're on to supplemental appropriations. 2022-421 for the year 2023. We'll get to it and lots of paper. Someone hand me a copy of this. There. Somebody out of my new secretary. Okay. I'm gonna ask Representative Jacome to read this in, please. He has a copy.
This one, right, John? Yes. Okay. All right, so resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation from the general fund unassigned fund balance to debt service. Whereas the fiscal year 2023 budget includes estimates for debt service for the April 2022 bond and note sale for the Groton 2020 school facility projects. And whereas due to unprecedented inflation and unexpected Federal Reserve interest rate increases, the actual debt service of fiscal year 2023 is higher than the adopted budget amount. Be it resolved that $384,463 is appropriated from the general fund unassigned fund balance, the debt service function 1076 for additional principal and interest payments due in fiscal year 2023 and referred to the RTM for approval. I so move.
Second.
Okay, first and a second. We have any discussion, John?
Sure. Right as we were going out for our bond sale for the school projects, we had Ukraine hit and inflation hit right at the same time. So interest jumped right at the last second, which ended up costing us more than anticipated. The notes for the notes, which was in 13,255,000, the budget for the interest was 178,943, and the actual is 396,545, so 217,602 deficit. The bonds 22, which were total 22,975,000, we budgeted a little over 1.9 million. And the actual was a little over 2 million, so 166,000 and change for that. So the notes were the worst ones. Of course, we have to pay the interest, and if we don't move the funds accurately, then we'll have an audit finding. So a lot, we have to pay it no matter what. So
this money's to pay interest payments.
yeah.
On the bonds. Do you have any questions?
You're muted.
You're muted. It's okay.
Sorry.
Fine, Neil, no problem.
All right. So John, my question is, do we refinance these every so many years, or
They're
How does the
eligible.
financing work on that?
Well, different bonds have different language as they're sold for when they can be refinanced. It'll be, it's never real quick. It's always down the road. I don't have the big packet here for the bonds right now. We have a financial advisor and a bond attorney though that tracks all that. And they always reach out to us if and when it's time and if they think we can get a better deal. So
Yeah.
we've refinanced in the past, but they always notify us.
Okay. So obviously we couldn't get a better deal. We had to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It was a very unusual circumstances. Up to a week before, a week or so before, other bonds in other places were selling differently, were selling at lower interest.
I had one question.
Mhm.
With just, I guess, with the constant like Fed hikes that are expected, I was like, is our bonds okay, or is that gonna be affected?
No, they're locked in rates.
Okay.
It's just for the first year, you don't know until the actual sale what the interest will be. So the financial advisor runs scenarios and looks at what's happening with other bond sales or the equivalent type things. And then tries to predict what's happening. And we use that for budgeting purposes. And then, like I said, it was really unusual circumstances that hit right when we sold, unfortunately.
Like war and everything.
Yeah, so this would come out of fund balance. We don't, we don't keep this much in contingency, so it'll just be out of what we have accumulated,
It's in the fund balance right now, do you know?
something like 22 million. Maybe
That's
even a little more.
good. That's why we got it. That's a good thing.
So, it'll go down some, if we end up having to use some for, the budget year, but we won't know until later.
Representative Scott, any questions, sir?
I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah, Representative Chase, okay. Seeing no more questions, call for a vote. Those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? So that passes 4-1-0. All right, we're on to the next one. Reallocation of excessive bonds proceeds, Groton 2020 plan.
Okay, we had, for the road bond millage, if you remember, we had the approval to the bond for roads. And right at the end, you have to spend all the money by a certain date.
Mhm.
Right at the end, some projects came in under budget, so we had 368,528 left. You can no longer spend that on roads. You can spend it on interest and future payments there, or you can move it to another one like the schools for, we still have some outstanding payments to make for the schools. If we move it over there, we can spend it there and that way alleviate, you'll avoid some interest costs later. It's really odd, I
So
know.
that's going on the principal of the bond, the school bond?
Well, we had, so what happened? We haven't bonded for everything for the schools yet. We have another bond coming. By moving this money over, you're reducing what you're gonna spend in the bond. Instead of bonding for, let's say, 20 million, you do 19,600,000 and change. And that way you're saving a little interest on the, you're not putting that money into the bond.
But long-term for the bond, you're saving a lot more money. Is that correct?
Right, you're saving, a chunk of money.
Correct. That's great.
Because because we already know what we're paying, we already have it scheduled for the roads for the interest, so it doesn't save us anything by keeping it there. You can keep it there, but then you're not saving anything. You're saving it by moving it. So this is a money saver, ultimately, is what I'm saying.
Do we have any questions for Manager Burt? We good? Okay, seeing no questions,
We don't
Question.
we don't need to read
Take a
it.
motion.
we need to make a motion to vote, don't we?
Do you want to read it in?
Yeah, okay, let's read it.
Can we read it?
Yeah, read it in,
All right.
please. I'm sorry.
You can have the ordinance. The resolution reallocating bond proceeds from the road maintenance and rehabilitation project to the Groton 2020 school facility improvement plan. Whereas the town of Groton authorized 11,200,000 general purpose bonds for the road maintenance and rehabilitation project pursuant to ordinance number 277. Whereas 3,715,000 principal amount of such bonds were sold as part of the 8,945,000 general obligation bonds issue of 2014, lot A, 6,690,000 principal amount of such bonds were sold. The general obligation bonds issue of 2018, $791,779.25, and bond proceeds were reallocated to the road maintenance and rehabilitation project the design and reconstruction of Dame Street project pursuant to ordinance numbers 275. The interest income on such bond proceeds was received in the amount of $84,380.72. And whereas the road maintenance and rehabilitation project has been completed and there remain unexpended bond proceeds in the amount of $368,528. And whereas the exceed bond proceeds from the road maintenance and rehabilitation project can be applied to the Groton 2020 School Facility Improvement Plan project authorized pursuant to ordinance number 284 as amended, and thereby reduce the amount of bonds needed to be issued for the Groton 2020 School Facilities Improvement Project Plan project. Therefore be it resolved that the town manager and director of finance are authorized to apply such excess bond proceeds in such amounts as they shall determine are available from ordinance number 277 to the Groton 2020 School Facilities Improvement Plan project authorized pursuant to ordinance number 284 as amended. The item shall be referred to the RTM. I so move.
Okay. We have no more questions, or we do? Seeing none, ask everybody to vote. All those in favor, raise their hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. No, nobody's no, and no abstentions. Okay, thank you. On to our last item. It's the adoption of the ordinance to establish property tax abatement for surviving spouses of fallen emergency workers. So, we read it in once to the record. I think everybody has a copy. I don't know if we have the updated copy. I need to know what
There's been a
copy.
couple of versions going around, so
Right.
make sure, I think the biggest thing is make sure it says 2,000, not 3,000. It's such small changes, I can always tell you what they are. But
And we're gonna discuss it again.
the one that Betsy sent out, was it yesterday? Is the correct one, the one she, I think it was yesterday.
It's the $2,000 on page 2. What you're talking about, John?
Yep, that should be the right
Representative
one.
Gardner, do you have the correct document in front of you?
I do.
Okay, everybody's good?
I'll make a motion to veto this.
I'll
shocked.
second.
Okay. We have some discussion, please?
Would you like me to
Yes,
mention
I'd like,
what's changed?
I'd like to.
Okay, I'll tell you the few items that changed since last time we were before the RTM. There's really 4 changes. One was removing, actually 3 changes. Adding the volunteers in to it for firefighters and police officers, limiting the abatement to 50% at a maximum of 2,000. And then making it clear that if you marry after getting the benefit and then divorce again, you're not allowed to reapply. So
They also removed federal employees.
that wasn't in this version of when it came to you guys. That came afterwards for the public hearing after you rejected it. And then it got put in and taken out since last time here.
I thought we had, no? we
Nope.
didn't? Okay.
So this one has federal.
The last
Or was
time we met, federal was in.
Oh, wasn't it? I thought,
Yeah.
okay, so it's out then. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's out. Yeah.
Okay, we were all asked to do a bunch of homework, so I'm gonna start with Representative Chase. Everybody's gonna go around the room and I'm gonna be the last one to speak. So I'd like everyone's opinion about how they feel about both the ordinance, the way it's written, and the things that they went and did research on as briefly as possible. Thank you. Representative Chase.
All right. On the, this, I don't know what paragraph you'd call this, if you start from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph. EMT duties means duties performed while traveling to, at, or returning directly from.
If anytime you're actively on a call, basically for EMT.
All right, but down below, death while in the performance of duty, the last line says time to and from the place of business is not considered performance of duty. So are those contradictory?
Yeah.
The very bottom line of
Very
the first
bottom
page.
line.
May I interject? I
Sure.
was gonna say, I think that means going to work and then coming home from work.
Oh, rather than going on a call.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the world of being toned out in the middle of the night, isn't that going to or from the place of business? 911, people are home asleep, 911 tones go out. They're driving to either the firehouse or the ambulance hall, or they're driving straight to the scene. How do you define that?
True.
It's definitely confusing.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Good point.
All right, that's number 1. Number 2 is, I do not agree with volunteers being in there under firefighter or police. I didn't see it under the police, but it definitely says it under
Yeah,
volunteer.
it's really under just firefighters, you have volunteers, but.
All right, so I don't agree with volunteers at all. They're not paid. It's their choice to be there. Blah, blah, blah. But so no volunteers. So on the second page, under police duties, when it says, police duties means any action which an officer is obligated or authorized by law, rule, regulation, or written condition of employment. So does written condition of employment mean they are at the academy? What does that mean?
Just in case you do have something that you require them to do, and it's then considered part of their duties, but yeah, if you required them as part of it to go to academy and something happened there and you died, then it would likely count.
Or like training, for example, right?
Right,
Like a lot of them will get
Yeah.
off-site
It's
training.
required if something happened to you. You don't have to actively be on a call.
Right, so even if someone's at the academy
That's the
and
way
they
I
haven't
read it.
really started,
They've been sworn in now.
right, okay.
I have a problem with it as well, but I'll keep my comment. too.
It's all about me right now, Sean.
I'm telling you, I love it.
Just kidding. Is that sarcasm again?
It's sarcasm.
All right, so then on the last page, the surviving spouse H, under H, the surviving spouse's annual income may not be more than 400% of federal poverty level. Right now, 400% of federal poverty level in 2022 is 54,360. That, in my opinion, is plenty of money to pay their own taxes. I think that's a little high. It should not be that high. 300% is 40,770. I could acquiesce to that if I needed to. 200% is 27,180. There are so many people in this town that make way lower than 54,360 that don't get any kind of help on anything. So that should be changed. J1, they have not remarried since the death of their police officer or firefighter spouse or EMT. Should EMT be in there as well?
Yeah, that's part of it, yep. Mhm. It's authorized by the act.
Right, but don't we need to say that if we're saying the other two entities?
We do say it up higher. Oh, you mean, oh, is it not in there under J?
Yeah,
It's
J1.
not-
They have not remarried since the death of the police officer. firefighters.
For EMT,
Mhm.
Yep, that should be added.
since that's a friendly amendment, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something we just change.
Want to point it out. I'm good, just Sean. Let's go.
Okay. I'm gonna ask Representative Chacon, are you done? You want more?
I think I had more to say. Let me think
Okay,
of it.
good. Let's hear it.
Yeah, with yield the floor. then.
Thank you. I personally am not in favor of any ordinance that for tax abatements of any kind. It puts a bigger burden on the rest of the taxpayers. That by no means means that I have any less respect for any of these bodies. Our police are top notch. Our firefighters, it's a rare day that you see anything burned down in our town. They're all top notch people. EMTs are right there for you when you call them. Much respect for them. But when someone goes into these kind of professions, they have to know that they're dangerous and they have to provide for their family in the future if something should happen to them, God forbid. Also, if we have some kind of a ridiculousness that happens in other parts of the country, and we have many people that need to collect on this, that puts a bigger burden on the rest of the taxpayers. So I don't agree with any tax abatement, so that doesn't single these three groups out. I just don't think it should be happening anywhere. Everybody should pay their fair share, and that's the way it should be.
Okay.
Good now. Thank you.
Representative Chacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I will keep it much more brief. And I've done a lot of thinking about this, and then, like Rep. Chase mentioned as well, I have the utmost respect for our emergency workers and what they do. I thought very long and hard about this. what concerns me and it's pushing me, away from this is once we open up this door, this can of worms. And once we allow this to happen, what stops other employments who are also put their life on the line, linemen, a lot of people, construction workers, things like that. What they sometimes it's through the unions, but stops them from asking for the same thing. So that was a big concern for me. But I have the utmost respect, and I'll leave it at that for now. See what the rest of the body will speak. Thank you.
Representative Gardner, please.
I've said a lot about this in the past. Basically, I'm in the same position I was, so I have nothing further to add. I know how I'm going to vote. Thank you.
And Representative Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of issues with this ordinance. First of all, as other members of the body have stated tonight, I have the utmost respect for emergency services providers. I actually work in the industry, so this is a hard one for me to say no to. But I think that this is the wrong direction for the town to take when it comes to providing benefits to our volunteers and to our collective paid employees. I also think that this opens up a Pandora's box. Why not include school teachers? And then if we include school teachers, God forbid we ever have a mass casualty situation, that we could have lots of people, and I think someone mentioned linemen. I mean, there's so many other entities, and I feel like we are passing an employee benefit, an employment benefit via ordinance, when a lot of these benefits are already negotiated or should be negotiated as part of collective bargaining situations. With that said, I'm going through the language of it. Another reason I think we need to veto this, the definition of firefighter that's on page 1. It goes on to say that means any person who is duly employed member or volunteer of a municipal fire department. The only municipal fire department that I'm aware of in the town of Groton is the City of Groton Fire Department. We otherwise have fire districts, which are not listed here, and that is an important delineation in how you define firefighters. You got fire departments, you got fire districts, and you got municipal fire departments, and I think all three of those need to be identified there. So this, if it's not clearly identified, leaves out a population of people. Unlike Representative Chase, I do think that volunteers should be included in something like this if we're going to pass it. The other thing that I'm concerned about is under the definition, I think it's on page 2, of a valid ambulance service provider. It goes on to say means any business or nonprofit engaged in the business of transporting sick, disabled, or injured individuals by ambulance to and from facilities or institutions of providing health services. So in the world of ambulances, you have two forms of transportation that are being provided. But I think what we're trying to accomplish here is to support the form of transportation where they've been toned out because someone dialed 911. The other aspect in the world of ambulance is what's known as non-emergency medical transport. So you've got an elderly person or a disabled person who is no longer able to drive. They call into an ambulance service and say, hey, can you pick me up at 2:30? I've got a 3 o'clock doctor's appointment over in Groton. And that is not an emergency situation. That's kind of almost like a taxi or an Uber ride that's being provided to these people. And that's not clarified in this situation. So if you have a non-emergency medical transport situation where the driver of the vehicle and maybe a support person who might be riding in the back with the patient, are we incorporating the non-emergency medical work as well as the emergency medical work? I mean, what is the intent of this ordinance? So those are my concerns on this. And again, I made the motion to support the veto or to have the veto, and I'm going to support that motion.
Thank you, Representative Scott. I'm going to be very brief. I made my comments before, and I think we'll have a full body discussion when it comes to this ordinance once we bring it to the floor. I have my doubts with the language and my doubts about this being a way to solve an issue that has lots of legality involved in it. I think Representative Jacome, Representative Gardner, Representative Chase, and Representative Scott have spoken briefly and right directly to a lot of the points that I agree with. So I'll be voting to veto this as it's written. And I have no disrespect for any of the people that serve our community. These are good, hardworking people, and it's not to take away from their family, it's to get it right. And once we start categorizing people in our community, I think we're in trouble as a town. And I believe that it is a Pandora's box, like what was said. You know, and heaven forbid, I think everyone is a first responder when the time's right. Police officers are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If they're seeing a crime and you know, with their family, they have to stop it. Okay, there's certain things that we don't understand about their jobs, just like my wife in the hospital. Okay, so on we go. I think we're gonna move forward now and take a vote. I'd like to take one now if everybody's done speaking about this ordinance. We have a vote. All those in favor of vetoing it? Raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Okay. So there's no one not vetoing it and there's no abstentions, so we're all in agreement. So I thank everyone for coming and, you know, we waited, we got a lot of work done here in a short period of time. I'm very grateful for the quorum. I know that everyone has a busy agenda and I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. So I'd like to make a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. Thank you so much and have a great evening.
Bye.
All right, you too.
Good night.
Yeah,
See you on the 14th.
thank you.